The red dust of Mars swirled around Dr. Claire Bennett's boots as she carefully brushed away centuries of sediment from what appeared to be a metallic surface. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Martian excavation site, where her team had been working for the past 3 months. "Dr. Bennett, you need to see this," called out Dr. Kevin Martinez, his voice crackling through the comm system. He was kneeling next to a partially exposed panel that seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. Claire made her way across the dig site, her movements slightly bouncy in the reduced Martian gravity. The discovery of these ruins had been surprising enough. Finding active technology was something else entirely. As she approached, the blue light grew stronger, responding to her presence in a way that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "It's been doing this for the last 10 minutes, Kevin explained, pointing to the symbols that were now appearing on the panel surface. "The patterns changed when you got closer." Claire knelt down, her helmet almost touching the strange surface. The symbols shifted again, forming what looked like Earth letters. Her heart began to race as she read the words that appeared. "Human presence detected. Temporal signature confirmed. Base, this is Dr. Bennett," she said into her comm. "We need a secure channel to Earth Defense Command. Priority 1. Within hours, the Mars base was swarming with military personnel. Commander Jack Harrison arrived with the first transport, his tall frame imposing even in the bulky pressure suit. He stood now in the temporary dome they had erected over the dig site, watching as Claire worked on the panel. "So you're telling me this thing is some kind of alien technology?" he asked, his voice skeptical but interested. Claire nodded without looking up from her work. "Not just alien technology, Commander. Based on these readings, we're dealing with something that can manipulate time itself." The panel suddenly hummed to life, projecting a holographic image into the air between them. A figure formed, humanoid but clearly artificial, its body composed of shifting lines of light. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," the figure said, its voice surprisingly warm. "I am Interface 7, spokesman for the Council of Time. We have waited 300,000 years for humanity to discover this facility." Commander Harrison stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving to where his sidearm would usually be. "What exactly is the Council of Time?" The hologram smiled. "We are the guardians of temporal stability across multiple galaxies. This facility was placed here to make contact when humanity reached the appropriate level of development." Claire's instruments were going crazy, recording energy signatures unlike anything she had seen before. "Why contact us now?" she asked. "Because humanity is needed," Interface 7 replied. "Your species possesses a unique characteristic, a natural resistance to temporal manipulation. This makes you essential to the coming conflict." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "What conflict?" The hologram's expression grew serious. "The Chrono Collective, a group of rogue temporal engineers, is attempting to seize control of all timelines. They have already enslaved dozens of civilizations. Earth will be their next target." Claire and Harrison exchanged looks. The implications were staggering. "How long do we have?" Claire asked. "In your linear time, approximately 6 months before their first attack. However, the nature of temporal warfare means they could strike at any point in Earth's timeline." Harrison straightened his shoulders. "What can we do to prepare?" "This facility contains technology and information that will help you defend yourselves. Dr. Bennett's natural temporal attunement made her the ideal candidate to find us. She will be crucial in understanding and adapting our technology." Over the next few weeks, the Mars facility became a hive of activity. Earth's governments were informed, and a joint task force was established. Claire worked tirelessly with Interface 7, learning about temporal mechanics and the technology the Council had left behind. One evening, as she was reviewing data in the facility's main chamber, Claire made a breakthrough. "Commander," she called out to Harrison, who had taken to spending his evenings in the facility. "I think I understand why humans are resistant to temporal manipulation." Harrison looked up from his tactical displays. "Why?" "Our consciousness, The human mind exists slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. It's subtle, but it means attempts to alter our timeline don't fully take hold. We can remember changes that should have been erased. Can we use this? Harrison asked, already thinking of military applications. Better than that, Claire replied, excitement in her voice. We can enhance it. The Council left us plans for devices that can amplify our natural resistance. We could protect not just individuals, but entire cities. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the facility. Interface 7 appeared, its usually calm demeanor replaced by urgency. We have detected temporal disturbances in Earth's solar system, the hologram announced. The Chrono Collective is testing your defenses earlier than anticipated. Harrison was immediately on his comm, alerting Earth Defense Command. Claire rushed to her instruments, confirming Interface 7's warning. The readings showed ripples in spacetime, like waves approaching a shore. They're trying to alter the timeline, Claire explained, her fingers flying over the controls. Small changes at first, testing for weaknesses. Can they succeed? Harrison demanded. Claire shook her head. Not completely. Thanks to our resistance, we'll know something's wrong even if they manage to change things. But we need to act fast. Interface 7's image flickered. The Council left you everything you need to fight back. But you must hurry. The Collective will not stop with these tests. As if to emphasize the point, a temporal wave passed through the facility. For a moment, everyone experienced a sensation of double vision, seeing both what was and what might have been. When it passed, they found their memories unchanged, but the computer systems showed that history had been altered and restored in the span of seconds. They're getting bolder, Claire said, checking the readings. That was an attempt to prevent this facility from being discovered. Harrison's jaw set in determination. How soon can we begin producing those protection devices you mentioned? With Earth's industrial capacity and the Council's plans. A few weeks for the first batch, but we'll need to train people to use them properly. Then we better get started, Harrison said. Humanity just got drafted into a war across time itself. Interface 7 nodded approvingly. The Council chose well in waiting for your species. Your adaptability, combined with your temporal resistance, makes you uniquely suited for this conflict. As Claire looked at the data streaming across her screens and the temporal disturbances rippling through space, she felt both fear and determination. Humanity had never faced a threat like this before, but they had something their enemies didn't expect. The ability to remember, to resist, and to fight back against those who would rewrite their very existence. The war for time itself was about to begin, and humanity's first line of defense was a scientist, a soldier, and an ancient alien AI, working together in a facility older than human civilization itself. Commander, Claire said, looking up from her work. I think it's time we showed the Chrono Collective why messing with human history is a very bad idea. Harrison smiled grimly. Doctor, I couldn't agree more. The temporal alerts became more frequent over the next few weeks. Dr. Claire Bennett barely slept, spending most of her time in the Mars facility's main control room. The holographic form of Interface 7 was her constant companion as they worked to understand the patterns of the Chrono Collective's attacks. They're becoming more aggressive, Claire said, pointing to a display showing temporal disturbance patterns. Each wave is stronger than the last. Commander Jack Harrison stood nearby, reviewing reports from Earth's newly formed Temporal Defense Force. Our ground teams are reporting strange phenomena. People remembering events that never happened, buildings appearing and disappearing. Lieutenant Susan Carter, who had arrived from Earth's top temporal physics program, walked into the control room with fresh data. Her expertise in theoretical physics had proved invaluable in understanding the Council's technology. The good news is that our temporal shields are working, Susan reported, bringing up a new set of readings. The bad news is that they're consuming far more power than we expected. Interface 7's hologram flickered with concern. The Collective is using more advanced techniques than we anticipated. They're attempting to create temporal fractures, permanent breaks in your timeline. Claire looked up from her work, alarmed. Can they do that? With enough power, yes. But your natural resistance makes it difficult. They would need to. The AI's warning was cut short as the facility's alarms blazed to life. Red emergency lights pulsed as temporal sensors detected a massive disturbance. Multiple temporal incursions detected. The facility's computer announced. Timeline alterations in progress. Claire rushed to the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. The temporal map of the solar system lit up with dozens of red points, each one representing an attempt to change history. They're targeting key moments in our technological development, Claire realized, studying the pattern. Trying to prevent us from reaching this point in time. Harrison immediately activated the emergency comm system. All Earth defense stations. This is Commander Harrison. Full alert status. Activate temporal shields according to Protocol Alpha. The next few hours were chaos. Reports flooded in from Earth as people experienced waves of alternate memories. Buildings in major cities flickered between different architectural styles as timeline changes rippled through reality. But humanity's natural resistance held. People remained aware something was wrong, even as the world tried to change around them. Lieutenant Carter worked frantically at her station, coordinating the global network of temporal shields. The shields are holding, but we're seeing power fluctuations. We can't maintain this level of protection indefinitely. Interface 7's image appeared beside them, more serious than they had ever seen it. The collective has revealed their full strategy. This is not merely an attack. It is an attempt to erase humanity's resistance to temporal manipulation from your very evolution. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. Can they do that? They are trying. But your species' temporal resistance appears to be fundamental to your consciousness. Even their strongest attempts are failing to fully take hold. Harrison slammed his fist on a nearby table. We can't just play defense forever. We need to strike back. Agreed, Interface 7 said. The Council left more than just defensive technology here. There are weapons, ways to fight back across time itself. Claire began accessing deeper levels of the facility's database, areas that had previously been locked. New schematics appeared on the screens, designs for devices that could not only detect temporal manipulation, but actively counter it. These are temporal disruptors, she explained, studying the plans. They can prevent the collective from stabilizing their changes to our timeline. Lieutenant Carter joined her at the console. Look at these power readings. If we can build these, we could not only defend ourselves but push back their attempts to change history. The facility shuddered as another temporal wave hit. This one was stronger than any before, and for a moment, reality seemed to blur around them. When it cleared, they found Interface 7 looking more urgent than ever. That was their first direct assault. The AI explained. They are no longer trying to be subtle. The full invasion will begin soon. Harrison straightened his uniform. How long do we have? In linear time. Perhaps 3 days, but they will attack across multiple points in history simultaneously. Claire looked at the weapon schematics floating before her. Then we have work to do. Lieutenant Carter, I need you to coordinate with Earth's manufacturing centers. We need to start producing these disruptors immediately. What about the power requirements? Susan asked. Use the designs for temporal capacitors in Section 7 of the database, Interface 7 suggested. They can store and channel temporal energy itself. Harrison was already on his comm, coordinating with Earth's military commands. We need to prepare for attacks that could come from any point in time. How do we defend against that? Claire pulled up another set of schematics. These temporal sensors can detect disturbances before they fully manifest. We can set up an early warning network. The next 2 days were a blur of activity. Earth's industries worked around the clock, producing temporal shields and disruptors. Military forces were equipped with devices that would allow them to remember the original timeline, even in the midst of temporal attacks. Lieutenant Carter developed a training program to help soldiers understand and use the new technology. Remember, she told each group, your natural resistance is your greatest asset. Trust your memories, trust your instincts. On the third day, just as Interface 7 had warned, the main assault began. Temporal disturbances erupted across Earth's timeline. Cities rippled with alternate histories, people experienced multiple sets of memories, and reality itself seemed to flutter like pages in a book. But humanity was ready. The temporal shields held firm, the disruptors prevented permanent changes, and Earth's defenders maintained their awareness through it all. The Chrono Collective's first major offensive crashed against humanity's prepared defenses. In the Mars facility's control room, Claire, Harrison, and Susan watched as their countermeasures proved effective. Interface 7's hologram observed with what almost looked like pride. The Council was right about humanity, the AI said. Your ability to adapt, combined with your temporal resistance, makes you formidable opponents. Harrison studied the tactical displays, showing temporal battle lines across history. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Yes, Interface 7 confirmed. The Collective will not give up easily. They have never encountered a species they couldn't subjugate through temporal manipulation. You represent a threat to their entire strategy of conquest. Claire looked up from her work, determination in her eyes. Then we'll show them why trying to rewrite human history is a mistake. Every attempt they make only teaches us more about their techniques, makes us better at fighting back. Indeed, Interface 7 agreed. And now that you have proven you can defend yourselves, it is time to learn about the next phase of the Council's plans. All eyes turned to the AI as new sections of the facility's database began to unlock. What you have seen so far is only the beginning, Interface 7 said. The Council left you everything you need not just to defend yourselves, but to take the fight to the Collective, to free those they have enslaved across time and space. The screens filled with new information, maps of temporal battlefields, designs for more advanced weapons, and strategies for carrying the fight beyond Earth's timeline. The warning had been delivered, the first battle had been won, but the real war was just beginning. The Alpha Centauri colony shimmered like a jewel against the backdrop of space. As humanity's first successful off-world settlement, it represented everything they had achieved in the past century. Now it was about to become the front line in a war that spanned time itself. Commander Jack Harrison stood at the colony's defense center, watching temporal distortion readings climb higher by the minute. Dr. Claire Bennett's voice crackled through the comm system from her position back at the Mars facility. The temporal shields are holding at 80%, she reported. But the Collective is trying something new. These patterns are different from what we've seen before. Lieutenant Susan Carter monitored the colony's newly installed temporal sensors from her station nearby. Multiple temporal incursions detected at the outer defense perimeter. They're testing for weak points. The colony's main viewport showed the strange sight of reality bending around their shields. Space itself seemed to ripple and fold as the Chrono Collective launched their first major offensive against a human settlement. All defense teams, maintain positions, Harrison ordered through the command channel. Remember your training. Trust your memories, even if reality shifts around you. The first wave hit like a tsunami of distorted time. Buildings flickered between different architectural styles as the Collective tried to alter the colony's development timeline. People experienced waves of alternate memories, versions of their lives where the colony had never been built. But humanity's temporal resistance held firm. The colonists kept their grip on the true timeline, supported by the defense technology they had developed. Interface 7's hologram appeared in the command center, its light form steadied despite the temporal chaos outside. They are attempting to prevent the colony's foundation, the AI explained. If successful, this would significantly delay humanity's expansion into space. Harrison nodded grimly. Not going to happen. Lieutenant Carter, activate the temporal disruptors. Susan's fingers flew across her control panel. Around the colony's perimeter, massive devices hummed to life. They began emitting waves of counter-temporal energy, disrupting the collective's attempts to stabilize their changes to the timeline. Disruptors at full power, Susan reported. The collective's temporal modifications are becoming unstable. Through the viewport, they could see the effects of their counterattack. The ripples in space began to fragment and break apart as the disruptors prevented the collective from maintaining their grip on the colony's timeline. Dr. Bennett, Harrison called through the comm. Are you seeing this? Their attack pattern is weakening. Yes, Claire replied, excitement in her voice. But there's something else. The way their temporal field is collapsing. I think we can track it back to its source. Interface 7's hologram shifted closer to the tactical displays. This is unprecedented. The collective usually prevents any attempt to trace their temporal signatures. It's because of the disruptors, Claire explained. They're not just preventing timeline changes. They're forcing the collective's temporal energy to remain coherent long enough to be tracked. Harrison saw the opportunity immediately. Can we launch a counterstrike? Follow their temporal signature back to their position. Better than that, Susan interjected, her hands moving rapidly over her controls. I'm detecting their actual temporal projection devices. They're massive ships, existing partially out of phase with normal spacetime. The tactical display updated, showing the ghostly outlines of several enormous vessels hovering just beyond the colony's defensive perimeter. They were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Their structures seemed to shift and change, never quite settling into a single form. Those must be their time dreadnoughts, Interface 7 said. The collective's primary weapons of temporal warfare. Harrison didn't hesitate. All defense batteries, target those coordinates. Lieutenant Carter, reconfigure the disruptors to focus their energy on those ships. The colony's defense systems came alive. Temporal disruptors combined with conventional weapons, creating a barrage that could affect targets across multiple timelines simultaneously. The collected ships, caught off guard by humanity's ability to detect them, began to take damage. It's working, Susan called out. Their temporal fields are destabilizing. They're losing their ability to maintain multiple timeline projections. Through the viewport, they could see the massive ships becoming more solid, more fixed in regular spacetime. As their temporal advantages failed, they became vulnerable to conventional attacks. Claire's voice came through the comm again, filled with urgency. Commander, we're detecting a massive power buildup in those ships. I think they're preparing to jump away. Not all of them will make it, Harrison said with grim satisfaction as the colony's weapons found their marks. One of the time dreadnoughts began to break apart, its temporal core overloading in a spectacular display that rippled across multiple dimensions. The remaining ships vanished in flashes of temporal energy, retreating from humanity's first major counterattack. As the temporal distortions faded, the colony settled back into its proper timeline. Buildings solidified into their correct forms, and the disorienting waves of alternate memory subsided. Status report, Harrison called out. Shield holding at 65%, Susan reported. Minor timeline fluctuations detected, but nothing permanent. The colony is secure. Interface 7's hologram showed what might have been approval. This is a significant victory. The collective has never lost a time dreadnought before. They will be forced to reconsider their strategy. More than that, Claire added through the comm. We've proven we can fight back effectively. The data we've gathered from this battle will help us improve our defenses and weapons. Harrison looked out at the now calm space around the colony. They'll be back, won't they? Yes, Interface 7 confirmed, but they will be more cautious now. They know humanity can not only resist their temporal attacks, but strike back at their forces directly. Then we better prepare for their next move, Harrison said. Dr. Bennett, how soon can we get this defense data to Earth's other colonies? Already transmitting, Claire replied. And Commander, we found something interesting in the temporal wreckage of that destroyed ship. It looks like coordinates, possibly to one of their staging areas. Harrison smiled. Then I think it's time we showed the collective that humans don't just defend. We attack. As the command center staff began preparing for their next phase of operations, Interface 7's hologram watched with growing interest. Humanity had just proven themselves more capable than even the Council had predicted. The war for control of time itself was far from over, but the first major battle had gone to Earth's forces. The Alpha Centauri colony stood firm, a testament to humanity's resilience and their growing mastery of temporal warfare. The Chrono Collective had intended this attack to be the beginning of humanity's defeat. Instead, it had become the start of their resistance. Operation Timekeeper began 3 weeks after the successful defense of Alpha Centauri. Dr. Claire Bennett stood in the Mars facility's main chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing their target, a massive temporal staging area used by the Chrono Collective. "The coordinates we recovered are genuine," she explained to the assembled military leaders. "The Collective has a major base in the Orion Nebula, partially phased out of normal spacetime." Commander Jack Harrison studied the tactical displays with intense focus. 6 Earth warships had been modified with temporal technology, their hulls now housing powerful temporal cores based on the Council's designs. "The temporal shields are ready," Lieutenant Susan Carter reported, bringing up new data streams. "And the disruptors have been upgraded based on what we learned at Alpha Centauri." Interface 7's hologram appeared among them. "Remember, this attack must be precisely timed. The Collective exists partially outside normal time flow. You will need to strike at multiple temporal coordinates simultaneously." The strike force departed Earth orbit under complete secrecy. Harrison commanded from the lead ship, while Claire and Susan monitored temporal readings from specialized equipment installed in the bridge. The journey to the Orion Nebula took 2 weeks at their best speed. "Temporal distortions increasing," Susan announced as they approached their target. "The base exists across at least 5 different time streams." Through the main viewport, they could see the strange sight of the Collective's base. It seemed to shift and change, never quite settling into one form. Parts of it appeared to be ancient, while others looked like they were still being built. "All ships, activate temporal shields," Harrison ordered. "Prepare disruptors for synchronized firing." Claire monitored the readings from her station. "The base's temporal signature matches what we found in the wreckage. This is definitely one of their major installations." The Earth fleet moved into position, their temporal shields allowing them to resist the time distortions surrounding the base. But before they could launch their attack, alarms blared across all ships. "Multiple temporal signatures," Susan called out. "Time dreadnoughts emerging." Space warped around them as 3 massive Collective ships phased into reality. They were larger than the ones at Alpha Centauri, their hulls covered in devices that bent time itself. "They were waiting for us," Harrison realized. "All ships, battle formations. Execute attack pattern Delta." The space around them erupted into chaos. The Collective ships fired weapons that caused time to speed up or slow down in localized areas. Earth's vessels responded with their own temporal weapons, their disruptors preventing the enemy from fully phasing out of normal spacetime. Claire worked frantically at her station, analyzing the enemy's attack patterns. "Their temporal cores are more advanced than what we saw before. They're trying to trap us in time loops." "Not going to happen," Harrison replied. "Lieutenant Carter, target their temporal projection systems." Susan coordinated the fleet's attack. Earth's ships fired in perfect synchronization, their weapons enhanced by temporal energy. The first time Dreadnought's shields buckled under the assault. "Direct hit," Susan reported. "Their temporal field is collapsing." But the Collective had more surprises. The base itself began to move, its structure flowing like liquid as temporal energy poured from massive emitters. "They're trying to jump the entire base to a different time stream," Claire warned. "If they succeed, we'll lose them." Harrison made a quick decision. "All ships, full power to temporal disruptors. Target the base's temporal core. We end this now." The Earth fleet redirected their attack. 6 temporal disruptors fired at once, their energy combining into a massive wave that struck the base's central structure. Reality itself seemed to crack as the base's temporal field began to break down. Multiple temporal overloads detected. Susan called out, "The base is becoming unstable." Through the chaos, they detected something unexpected: life signs from within the base. Claire's instruments picked up readings that made her heart skip a beat. "Commander, there are prisoners in there," she shouted. "Other species the collective has captured. The temporal disruption is freeing them from some kind of stasis." Harrison didn't hesitate. "Prepare emergency transporters. As soon as their temporal fields fail, we grab everyone we can." The battle reached its climax as the base's temporal core began to collapse. The remaining time dreadnoughts tried to stabilize it, but Earth's attacks had done too much damage. Reality rippled as years of temporal energy were released at once. "Temporal core critical," Susan warned. "Detonation imminent." "Now, transport everything you can," Harrison ordered. The Earth ship's transporters activated, pulling hundreds of beings from the failing base. Moments later, the structure exploded in a blast that sent waves of temporal energy cascading across space. When the chaos settled, they found their ships holding areas filled with survivors from a dozen different alien species. Many had been trapped in temporal stasis for centuries, used by the collective for temporal experiments. "Status report," Harrison called out as they moved away from the blast zone. "All ships reporting in," Susan replied. "Minimal damage. We have over 300 rescued prisoners on board across the fleet." Claire studied the readings from the base's destruction. "The temporal explosion has created a dead zone. The collective won't be able to use this area of space for their operations anymore." Interface 7's hologram appeared on the bridge. "This is an unprecedented victory. You have not only destroyed one of their major bases, but freed many of their victims. The Council will be pleased." Harrison watched as medical teams began treating the rescued aliens. "How many more bases like this do they have?" "Several," Interface 7 replied. "But you have proven that they are not invulnerable. More importantly, you have shown other species that resistance is possible." Claire approached with new data. "The survivors are already offering to help. Many of them have first-hand knowledge of collective technology and operations." "Then we'll put that knowledge to good use," Harrison said. "The collective thought they could control all of time. Instead, they just brought together an alliance that will end their power forever." As the Earth fleet set course for home, carrying their rescued allies, the true impact of Operation Timekeeper became clear. Humanity had done more than win a battle. They had given hope to species across time and space. The war was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted. The Chrono Collective's grip on time itself was beginning to slip, and humanity was leading the charge to break it completely. The final battle for temporal freedom began in the Orion Arm. 6 months after Operation Timekeeper, Earth's fleet had grown, now joined by ships from the liberated species. Dr. Claire Bennett stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching as hundreds of vessels moved into position. "Temporal grid is active," Lieutenant Susan Carter reported from her station. "All ships are synchronized to prevent time-slip attacks." Commander Jack Harrison studied the tactical display showing their target, the Chrono Collective's central command hub. It was a massive structure that existed in multiple time streams simultaneously, coordinating all their temporal operations. "The prisoners we rescued were right," Claire said, checking her readings. "This is where they control everything from. Their main temporal core is here." Interface 7's hologram appeared among them. "The Council confirms your target. Destroy this facility, and the Collective's ability to manipulate time will be severely crippled." The Allied fleet moved forward, their temporal shields working together to create a stable bubble of space-time. They had learned from previous battles, adapting their technology to counter the Collective's tricks. "Multiple contacts," Susan called out. "Time dreadnoughts emerging. More than we've ever seen before." Space warped as dozens of massive collective ships phased into reality. They immediately began their attack, firing weapons that could age their targets to dust or reverse them to their component atoms. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega, Harrison ordered. Remember your training. Don't let them isolate you in temporal bubbles. The battle erupted across multiple timelines. Earth ships led the charge, their natural temporal resistance allowing them to coordinate the Allied forces. The freed species fought with determination, their knowledge of collective technology proving invaluable. Claire worked at her station, monitoring the complex web of temporal energy surrounding them. They're trying to create a massive time loop. If they succeed, they'll trap the entire fleet. Not today, Harrison replied. Lieutenant Carter, signal the Beta Squadron. Time to use our secret weapon. Susan sent the command, and a group of smaller ships broke formation. They carried devices that Dr. Bennett had created, temporal resonators that could amplify humanity's natural resistance to time manipulation. Resonators active, Susan reported. Temporal field is expanding. The effect was immediate. The collective's attempts to create time loops began to fail as the resonators spread humanity's temporal resistance to their allies. Ships that would have been trapped remained free, able to continue their attack. Their temporal control is weakening, Claire observed. We need to press the advantage now. Harrison nodded. All ships, focus fire on their command hub. Don't let them stabilize their temporal field. The Allied fleet concentrated their attack. Temporal disruptors combined with conventional weapons, striking the massive structure from multiple time streams at once. The collective's defenders fought desperately, but they had never faced an opposition that could resist their temporal powers so effectively. Direct hit on their main temporal core. Susan called out, reading massive energy fluctuations. The command hub began to break apart, its structure unable to maintain coherence across multiple timelines. But as it failed, Claire's instruments detected something alarming. Commander, they're trying to trigger a temporal collapse, she warned. They'll destroy this entire sector of space rather than lose control. Interface 7's hologram flickered with urgency. If they succeed, it will create a void in space-time that could spread across galaxies. Harrison made a quick decision. Dr. Bennett, can we use the resonators to contain the collapse? Claire's fingers flew over her controls, running calculations. Yes. If we create a stable temporal field around the hub, we can force the collapse into a controlled sequence. Do it, Harrison ordered. All ships with resonators, move into position. Everyone else, fall back to safe distance. The Earth ships carrying resonators formed a sphere around the failing command hub. Claire coordinated their efforts, using their combined power to create a bubble of stable time. Inside the bubble, the collective's temporal core began its final collapse. Reality itself seemed to crack and bend as centuries of accumulated temporal energy released at once, but the resonator field held, containing the destruction. Temporal collapse contained, Susan reported. The hub is breaking down in a controlled sequence. Through the viewport, they watched as the massive structure imploded, taking with it the collective's ability to manipulate time on a grand scale. The remaining time dreadnoughts, cut off from their command center, began to lose coherence. Their temporal network is falling apart, Claire announced. Without the hub, they can't coordinate their timeline manipulations. The Allied fleet moved in to finish the job, destroying or capturing the stranded collective ships. As the battle wound down, Interface 7's hologram addressed them. The Council congratulates humanity and their allies, the AI said. The Chrono Collective's power is broken. Their attempt to control all of time has failed. Harrison looked out at the aftermath of the battle. What happens now? Now, Interface 7 replied, we rebuild. The Council offers humanity full membership, and with it, the responsibility to help guard time itself. Claire smiled. We've learned so much about temporal mechanics. We can use this knowledge to help prevent anyone else from trying what the collective did. And we'll have help, Susan added, indicating the Allied ships surrounding them. The species we freed want to work with us, combine our knowledge. In the days that followed, The Alliance began the work of rebuilding. The Council provided access to more of their advanced technology, helping to establish new safeguards against temporal manipulation. Claire's research into temporal mechanics continued, now aided by scientists from a dozen different species. They worked to understand and protect the natural temporal resistance that had helped humanity win the war. Harrison oversaw the creation of a new joint fleet, dedicated to protecting the timeline from any future threats. The freed species joined eagerly, their combined experience making them formidable guardians of temporal stability. As Interface 7 had predicted, humanity's role in the universe had changed forever. They were no longer just observers of time's flow. They had become its protectors, ensuring that no one would ever again try to control all of history. The war for time itself was over, and a new era of cooperation across species and timelines had begun. The Council of Time had chosen well when they waited for humanity to discover their facility on Mars. The future and the past were now safer than ever before.